call this work session to order on a general overview on the Community Relations Task Force. Let's go ahead and start with introductions.
Forrest Barr. Pete Peterson.
Felix Rivera.
Thanks, Alex.
And yeah, you can have folks in the audience introduce themselves too.
Deputy Chief McCoy. Pastor Victor Marbury.
Reverend Dr. William Green.
Right. And then on the phone, Cameron, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Red Radio.
Austin?
Austin Quinn Davidson.
Crystal?
Crystal Kennedy.
And John?
John Waddleton.
And Suzanne, are you with us? Okay. All right, so as normal, folks on the phone, if you want to...
Felix?
Yes.
So this is Celeste Hodge-Grout, and I'm on the line.
Oh, great, thank you.
And this is Night Sword. I'm also on the line.
Great, thank you.
Louis Overstreet's also on the line.
Great, thank you, Louis.
And Stephanie Jedlicka is also on the line.
Great, everyone on my list. Fantastic, thank you. So for folks on the phone, if you want to get in the queue, please clarify. Assembly members on the phone, if you want to get in the queue, please text me. And then, so purpose of this work session, as everyone here knows, there has been a lot of discussion in our community and in the media surrounding the Community Relations Task Force. So this is just to give us a historical overview of the task force to today, just so we can get a sense of what the task force is, what it has done, and we'll also get a preview of future conversations occurring in the community. So let me just go through the list of folks that we have speaking with us. We have an hour for today's conversation. So we're going to start with Mr. Louis Overstreet, then we're going to turn to Reverend Green, then Pastor Marbury, then Celeste Hodge-Grout, then Deputy Chief McCoy, then Stephanie, and apologies if I mispronounce your last name, Jedlicka, and then Night Soar. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Overstreet.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm reaching you from Las Vegas, Nevada. And since we are sort of semi-lockdown, I won't be able to gamble my Alaska retirement check away today, so I'm glad to be with you. But can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. But the title of my remarks, I asked that you be submitted for the record. There are about 3 pages of remarks, but what I've done in the interest of time is to highlight talking points that hopefully will facilitate discussion and questions. So let me begin with the title, A Reckoning on Racism Is Now or Never Time in America. The climate of divisiveness that existed in 1979 in Alaska, stemming from the killing of Philip Moore, an unarmed black man at the hands of a state trooper. That killing at the time was sort of unique, and it received national and international attention, with Bob Lamb with the Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Justice coming to Alaska and holding a series of conferences trying to address the problem. I think a task force was badly needed back then, and national events suggest that it's needed now more so than ever. Specifically, a task force that has a mandate to promote better police and community relations has to be ranked at the top of such entities, both in Alaska and nationally, since at least the last quarter of the last century, starting around the late 1960s, early 1970s to be exact. I believe there's a measurable percentage psychologically unfit persons have been allowed to populate police departments throughout America. As such, they believe their role to be that of controlling, not patrolling persons of color communities. Evidence of this fact was presented to us as recently as yesterday when 3 officers of Wilmington North Carolina was discovered or overheard to say they wanted to start a race war, and then a gentleman in Tucson, Arizona was held down by the police for 12 minutes and he subsequently died. I feel that the behavior of bad cops, unfortunately, is often regrettably condoned by police unions, thus making it almost impossible to get rid of bad cops. That has to be addressed probably at the local level and some state levels, and with minimum involvement on the national level. I think that the U.S. House of Representatives made a good start yesterday or day before when 236 to 181 they passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. But you know, those of us who are familiar with politics, and all of you are, that has very little chance of passing in the Senate. But what it does do is outline some key things that need to be addressed. And prior to completing my remarks, I think it's important to say I think the process has been accelerated, both helped and hurt, by 24-hour news networks, body cams on police officers, and certainly cell phones. So that's the good, bad, and the ugly, I guess you can say, in terms of what can help or hurt our efforts to bring about police reform. I would suggest that task force be assigned a mandate to look at the viable ways to reduce potentially deadly encounters between bad cops and citizens in general, and black males in particular. I think in order, since you're not going to be able to get rid of the bad cops until they commit a bad act, we may want to look at ways to reduce interactions with bad cops and the public, especially with traffic violations and or misdemeanor crimes. And I suggest several ways that this can be done in terms of issuing tickets rather than stopping citizens, and if they don't pay it within 90 days, then go out and electronically disable their car. Also, to eliminate high-speed chases involving property theft. Now, that was a commission of felony crime where the suspects was armed. That's a whole different ballgame. But these high-speed chases over somebody stealing a car, it makes no sense. Also, we need to develop ways to humanely detain persons who have committed or been accused of misdemeanor crimes. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and I look forward to listening to the other presenters and answering any questions you may have based on my experience in Alaska dating back to 1975 through early 1993. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Overstreet. So next we will hear from Reverend Green, the chair of the Community Relations Task Force. And hopefully, Mr. Green, Reverend Green, you'll be able to talk to us about some of the work that you have done over the decades with the task force.
Thank you very much. And it's a privilege to be here to talk about the task force and our community. I came aboard with the task force in 1987. At that time, it has been 1 year in the hour. And since 1987, I'm still here because every year they voted for me back in. And I think the task force has been a united force to the community. I think the community has benefited from the presence of the task force, and the task force since 1987, since we've been in. And by the way, this is Pastor Margaret, the vice chair of the task force. He's been with us about 10 years. And so we've been involved in many things. And the previous mayors have supported the task force 100% of the time. And we have been involved, they invite us to get involved with every fair situation. And that's what we have been doing. Mayor Wordsman, he's the mayor of the city. He broadened the scope of the task force. He asked us to get involved with racism and all complain about racism and bring unity to the city. We have done that. All right. For example, the Cotillion Club, okay, they had a problem. And they came together. And
Hold on, Reverend Green. Folks on the phone, can you please mute yourselves? No, thanks. Go ahead, Reverend Green.
yeah, they invited the task force to resolve that issue. And with young people, it was a misunderstanding. So they said they went to every place in the city for help. We resolved that problem in less than 30 days. Meeting with the staff and going over the procedure, constitution, bylaws, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a lack of good supervision and understanding. And so the task force in task force opinion has been united. We were brought together to help the city to be one. All right? And to make sure that racism was not to be a problem. Because the task force and our concern was racism is used to be, not now. And so we got involved in all issues when it comes to racism in the city and outside of the city. And so, and working with unity with the police. There's a problem, the task force is there. For instance, we have badges. And if there's a killing or shooting, they would call us, don't care what time it is, to get the task force involved. And we would hasten to chair. I would call every task force member and let them know we got a problem going on and we're working on it. Okay? Calm, cool, and collected. Don't get excited because the task force is there to survey the situation. And so we did that for quite some time. And the relationship between the community and APD has improved, I would say, 100%. Because we work together and we resolve issues without going to a hassle. And so that's my report on the task force. And we had Judge Burgess, when he was a U.S. attorney, he stayed on the task force for about 5 years. And he was an outstanding person to the task force. And he advised us on legal affairs and et cetera, and he stayed on the task force until he was selected federal judge. And, he came and reached the task force one time, and he's still an asset to the task force. And so my thing is that just like the task force was needed in 1981 when Casell Williams was shot, all right, got just ready, and what happened, the officer that was in charge decided to use excessive force without advancing it to higher authority. And so that was a serious situation, and Bob Lamb, the late Bob Lamb, got involved from Seattle. And Bob came over here about 6 months, put the task force and helping us put the task force together. All right. And it has been a solid thing. And the task force is still here, but we had some problems. Jealousy. A lot of people feel that the now situation, that the task force was working over areas that they should not be involved in. All right. We got a letter from the Commission of Equal Rights, saying that what's going on with the between APD, it was the equal right responsibility and not the task force. And I think you have a copy of that letter. Right? And so that's where we stand now. It's some issues that need to be resolved. Where the task force in the assembly, okay, this was organized with the APD, the administration, and the assembly, all right? And so we met before the assembly in the 80s with Mayor, Mayor Words, okay? And at that time, the task force requested a token from the assembly to bear administrative costs. So the assembly approved $25,000 for the task force, and it was vetoed by the mayor. However, he said that the Equal Rights Commission would pick up the responsibility of administrative part for the task force. All right, and that worked good until about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Where they said that they no longer can. I think they had $15,000 cut out of the budget, and they could no longer afford administrative costs. All right. We got a letter from the Commission of Equal Rights saying that, in so many words, you should have a copy of that letter, saying that it was the equal right responsibility, in so many words, to deal with APD and to coordinate, and then we were outside our bounds. All right. And that's why the task force haven't met officially for the last 2 months because of that bad blood that came. And that's where they stand now. All right. And I feel that the task force has been a tremendous asset to the city. All right. We came in during the Bird incident in Texas. I believe it was Bird. Yeah, the guy was drugged to death. All right. And during that time, the task force came in number 2 in the United States, and Texas came in number 1 because of the handling of that situation. Just happened with a drug death and killed. Okay. And so everything has been A-OK until about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we received a letter. In other words, you outside your bounds. All right. And that it gave me the impression of the task force impression, and I met with the mayor. We met with the mayor and the assembly chair at that time, and they said that, they feel that we should have a 501c3. Well, we came together, a 501c3 was not spoken of. We came together because the task force was here to become a problem solver, all right, to bring APD together with the community, all right, and we have done that. We have worked with APD 100%, they have worked with the task force 100%. And a lot of issues that we work out with the task force, all right? And they have been very helpfully helping this community come together as one. Where there's a problem, there was a task force. All right? We weren't here to create a name or look for a position. I look at this city as our city, all right? And I said to the mayor worked for us. We don't work for the mayor. All right. This is a community issue. All right. And in order to have peace, the community must be involved. And that's where the task force at. We don't mind getting involved. We spend a lot of time. And until 2 months ago.
Thank you so much, Reverend Green. Pastor Marbury, as the vice chair, did you want to add anything else?
Well, we just maybe, anyone have any questions so far? Ask Pastor Green right now. Go ahead, but we all know that the value of the task force is evident. If you look at the records, it's been proven, so there's no doubt about that. It's continuing from here on. As I looked at some of my records just lately, the task force had been doing a reform where we checked the APD policies before they were public on the internet or anything available to the public, and made recommendations on some things about use of force, shooting at a moving vehicle, and things of that nature. But we've also dealt with the predatory towing here in the city, things like that. So no issue that's unrighteous, unjust, we've been dealing with. We're looking for fairness, and we have quite a few nationalities here, and we help them understand, like the South Sudanese, how to cultivate and come into our cultures and understand some of our principles, tactics, and policies. So I think we just should put this together and move forward.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have questions at the end. So if folks want to ask questions, feel free to get in the queue. Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor Marbury, and thank you so much, Reverend Green. So next, I'm going to turn to Ms. Celeste Hodge-Groudon, who served on the task force for several years. Ms. Hodge-Groudon, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. As was already shared, my name is Celeste Hodge-Groudon. I am the former president of the NAACP for nearly a decade. I'm currently serving as the president and CEO of the Alaska Black Caucus. And I am testifying today, or bringing my comments forward, regarding my experience of serving on the task force. I served from 1998 to 2003. And at that time, it was called the Minority Community Police Relations Task Force. And the reason why it was called that is because the task force was comprised of not only law enforcement individuals from various entities, FBI, as was already shared, but it also consisted of the leaders from the diverse communities. And so it was effective. People saw it as an opportunity to come and share their concerns in a way that they felt would bring about some results, because they thought, and let me apologize right now, I have my almost 1-year-old granddaughter with me, so in the background you might hear her having a fit, but I'll continue and I'll hang around for questions. But so they saw this as an opportunity to come and bring their concerns to this task force and know that the issues would get resolved, because they felt that if they took it to the police department, internal affairs, that it was really about the hen watching the house there, and that their issues weren't getting resolved. And Reverend Green, I remember how many times, there were so many times that we had community events where people could come and hear about hate crime. It was like an education period where we actually learned a lot about the FBI because they would host some of the meetings there. It was a time where we got our business done. And I just want to say, there were opportunities for the task force to go into the Anchorage Police Department and provide training. And we so need the training within the Anchorage Police Department. We had an opportunity to investigate complaints of discrimination by the public, as I shared. We also investigated APD employee complaints from people of color, you know, who alleged that they were being discriminated against within the Anchorage Police Department. We know that there's a disproportionate minority contact within the criminal justice system, and that Black and other people of color are disproportionately represented. We need a task force. I don't know if it's necessarily a task force, but some type of a mechanism, whether it's a citizens review board, but we need this for our community. And we need to make sure that we are moving forward within this city and that we're not going backwards. And so I know that the task force is a very important tool that could benefit this community, and more importantly, people of color, because they are the ones that typically take the brunt. So that's all I have to share right now. It's definitely something that's needed.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hodge-Broughton. I want to note for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Constant. So next I'll turn it to Deputy Chief McCoy to talk about APD's history in working with the Community Relations Task Force.
Great, thank you, Mr. Guerrero. So, the police department, we have a very good relationship and partnership with the task force, and it's been that way for many years.
If you could speak up a little bit.
I'm sorry, it's me. I can't hear you very well.
Oh.
Thank you.
So, the police department has had a very good partnership with the task force for many years, and the task force has served as a benefit to the community. And the way I view our relationship with the task force, the task force has acted primarily as a mediator between the police department and the community. As mentioned earlier, citizens may have concerns that they don't feel comfortable bringing directly to the police department out of fear that it may not be handled properly or investigated fairly. The task force was a conduit for them to bring those concerns forward to an independent body, and the MOUs in place between the task force and the police department allowed us to share information, to provide them the necessary tools to conduct an independent investigation into whatever the concerns were, and they would offer their findings in the form of recommendations to us, as well as being able to help the citizens understand what the process may have been that led to the event or to the findings of whatever their complaints were. So again, the task force I've always viewed it as a good partner and as a mediator between us and the community. Another aspect that's been very important that the task force has played is through education. Our department provides regularly at the task force meetings 3 to 4 times a year different training sessions about the police department and the community coming to those meetings, getting the opportunity to learn those different aspects of what goes on at APD and to ask questions about what we do and why we do it. And again, it's just been a very beneficial opportunity for that type of engagement. One summer, we had a visitor from New York City who was in Alaska and found her way to the task force, one of our meetings, just to observe. And afterwards, they spoke with me and just really praised this format, saying, wow, this is something that we could use in New York City, a conduit for the community to engage this way with the police department. And again, it's all about relationship building. As Reverend Reed mentioned, years past, the task force has been called out during volatile situations where the community may have concern about perhaps the police use of force and so forth. We would be willing to share information with the task force on what's going on, and that information can be relayed back to the community to just kind of keep everyone calm while the process it plays itself out. And again, I think a lot of this goes back to education and having a body that the community trusts to provide information on what's going on and to explain the process and to ensure the community that, yes, this is going to be looked at fairly and handled appropriately. It is an important tool for the community. So, fast forward to present day, we all acknowledge that participation levels have declined with the several members of the task force who've fallen off, as well as community involvement. I think with all of the things that are going on nationwide right now, we've seen a renewed emphasis, and I think it's a real good opportunity for people to become involved again and for us to revitalize the task force in this form or a similar form. But I think over the years, the task force has shown its benefit to the community, and it's been a benefit for the police department to have that type of connection to where, if there are concerns about what we're doing, we can provide the task force with the necessary information to go back to the community and resolve issues as they arise.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Chief. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, an Anchorage Equal Rights Commission senior investigator. She has worked several years with the task force and can speak from that experience. Stephanie?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Jedlicka, and I have been an investigator for the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission since 2013. This afternoon, I'm going to briefly outline for you my involvement with the Anchorage Community Police Relations Task Force. As part of my duties with the AERC, I first began staffing task force meetings in 2013 and continued to do so through 2018. During that entire time, Reverend Green and Pastor Barnbury served as chair and vice chair of the task force. My duties with the task force included creating agenda and minutes, arranging presentations for the agenda, providing all administrative support at task force meetings, and drafting correspondence between the task force and community groups and other governmental agencies. I also participated in subcommittees, including incident report subcommittees, as well as drafting reports for those committees, and arranging community forums for the task force, inviting presenters, securing venues, and creating advertising and educational materials. The task force is governed by a set of bylaws, which were last amended in 2012. The task force also has a memorandum of understanding between the task force and the Anchorage Police Department that is renewed each mayoral term. Under the MOU, the AERC is to serve as an advisory member to the task force. However, the AERC's duties have always been substantially more involved than that. For example, in addition to the duties previously mentioned, I also provided administrative support to the task force from 2013 until 2018, and other AERC staff staffed the task force meetings prior to and thereafter. Between 2013 and 2018, the task force received between 1 and 6 complaints each year regarding community interactions with the Anchorage Police Department. Once a complaint was received by the task force would form a subcommittee and investigate the incident. Per the task force bylaws, this subcommittee included an AERC staff person who would lead the investigation and several task force members. The subcommittee would typically meet 1 to 2 times before a report was drafted regarding the incident. This report was then presented to the full task force and voted on. The complainant would be notified by the AERC of the outcome via phone and mail. During times when the task force did not have any active incident reports, I regularly scheduled presentations with Anchorage area law enforcement. These presentations provided a learning opportunity for members and were insightful and engaging for them. As mentioned, the task force has a set of bylaws that outline required procedures and protocols. Per the bylaws, a chair, vice chair, and secretary are to be elected biannually for a term of 2 years. Although the bylaws mandate such elections, regular elections had not been held when I first became involved with the task force. Beginning in 2014, elections were held in December of each year. However, the task force has had limited member participation, and in the last 7 years, I am only aware of one secretary who was elected to the task force membership, from the task force membership. The duration of her term was less than 6 months, and the AERC thereafter resumed administrative duties. The MOU and bylaws also provide that municipality of Anchorage participation should be no more than 25% of the task force membership, and that the membership should reflect the ethnic diversity of Anchorage. However, during my involvement, the majority of members present at meetings were government agencies. In addition, community participation has declined in recent years. The AERC conducted a survey many years ago to determine how to engage task force members and received concerns from members about the meeting day and time, the length of the meetings, the frequency of the meetings, and the leadership of the task force. Finally, per the bylaws, the task force can only accept and address complaints involving the Anchorage Police Department. However, task force members often spent considerable time and effort attempting to review items that are non-jurisdictional, such as Department of Corrections and school district issues. I would like to thank you for your time today.
Thank you. And then last, before we move on to questions, we have Mr. Knightsor, who works with the Department of Justice Community Relations Service, and he's here to talk a little bit about the work that he does. Go ahead, Mr. Soar.
Thank you so much. First, I wanted to express my appreciation to the Municipal Assembly for allowing me to introduce my agency. A little bit,
Mr. Soar?
Oh? Okay, definitely. So I would like to express my appreciation to the Anchorage Municipal Assembly for allowing me to introduce my agency. And I'm not sure if the PowerPoint is on, but if it is on, I will ask for a slide advancement by saying next slide. And for those of you who are on the phone and would like to have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, I will certainly make that available. So without further ado,
Mr. Soar, sorry to interrupt again. So unfortunately the PowerPoint you sent me was too large for me to forward on. So we'll find a way to get it to all the assembly members. So as you are going through, just know that we don't have a PowerPoint in front of us.
Okay, great. That actually makes it a lot quicker, so thank you. Eventually I will share that either as a PowerPoint or as a PDF. But the Community Relations Service came into existence under Title 10 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And our mandate is to assist community in resolving conflict relating to race, color, and national origin. With the passage of the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act in October 2009, we can lend assistance to those under the new jurisdictional category, which means we can now able to assist, to respond to, and to help prevent the allegation of violent hate crimes committed based upon actual or perceived race, color, national origin, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, and disability. CRS does not advocate, investigate, or prosecute. We are an impartial agency. Our services are voluntary, confidential, and absolutely free. CRS is the only federal agency dedicated to assisting state and local government, private and public organizations, the community groups, with preventing and resolving racial and ethnic tension, hate crimes, community-based racial conflict, and civil disorder. So in doing the work, we provide 4 types of services: The first one is facilitation of dialogue. CRS is actively convening and aiding dialogue and problem solving between stakeholders in the joint sessions. The second type of service is mediation. This is a structured process where parties convene by CRS problem solve and develop solutions and agreements. It could include written action plans or memorandum of understanding or an agreement or some other form of written document to memorialize the process. The third type of services is consultation. Consultation provides stakeholders with the technical assistance, best practices, or resources which assist in conflict resolution or capacity building. And the fourth type of service is training. Training allows CRS and subject matter experts, or SMEs, to provide knowledge or skill-based programs to community leaders, law enforcement, city officials, and others. CRS offers its services to various organizations such as community and civil rights leaders, city, county, state, and federal officials, school districts, and school communities such as colleges and universities, Native American tribes, law enforcement, and faith leaders, among others. And in offering these four service areas, we categorize them into three major components. The first is the administration of justice. We call it AOJ. AOJ involves law enforcement such as police, sheriffs, district attorneys, and tribal jurisdictions and other criminal justice institutions. The second is education. CRS may offer to conduct a school spirit program to help address tension and conflict at the educational institution. Although our work does not pertain to bullying exclusively, we can offer consultation services to identify bullying experts and resources to assist the school. The third category is the general community relations. Here, CRS work includes community institutions and others that are affected by demographic shifts, language barriers, and so forth. So this is a list of CRS programs that are made available for the three service areas. For example, in the administration of justice, we have a program called Strengthening Police and Community Partnership, engaging and building relationships with various communities, including the transgender communities, Muslim Americans, and Sikh Americans. Under education, we have a SPIRIT program, and SPIRIT stands for Student Problem Identification and Resolution of Issues Together. Under the GRC, the General Community Relation, we have a dialogue on race that is heavily in demand right now throughout the lower 48 states. And training programs such as contingency planning, reducing risk during public events, and self-marshaling, supporting the public safety during these events. And to go a little bit deeper in terms of contingency planning, for example, we know that police departments have their own contingency planning, but by requesting our services and speaking to us in that 1 or 2 hour period, we may present some idea that the police jurisdiction may not have thought of. And the reason we can do this is because throughout the year, we see hundreds of major events, of major protests throughout the entire country, and there are best practices that can be collected from these events and shared. Specifically relating to the state of Alaska, in September of 2019, last year, CRS worked with public officials, community and faith leaders, and subject matter experts to facilitate a hate crime forum in order to share best practices for addressing acts of intolerance, bias incidents, and bias crime. A few months later, in January of 2020, CRS conducted a SPIRIT program at a local high school in Anchorage with the assistance of many community leaders and public officials to train student leaders on how to resolve conflict using time-tested, evidence-based conflict resolution mechanism. So we have 10 regional offices and 4 field offices across the entire country. I'm responsible for the largest geographical jurisdictions, which include Alaska, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And unfortunately, I am the only one. And so we are understaffed. So if the request for services is assessed to be jurisdictional, we'll gladly offer the services, and it is up to the requester to accept or reject the service. I won't take any offense over any rejection. I learned a long time ago, and my grandma taught me to never dance between the raindrops, because if you do, you'll get wet anyway. I will provide you with my contact information, but right now I wanted to focus a little bit of the attention on what is needed for the future and moving forward. Regarding the task force, I would like to express my appreciation for the historical background. The Constitution and Reconstitution conversation of the recommitment agreement that took place, that started in 1981 and ended in 2012, occurred before my time. I don't believe my agency was involved with the bylaw discussion or its formalization. However, we are the only federal agency mentioned regarding a standing membership as an advisory member. No other federal agency or Department of Justice component is named or is under any obligation to attend or be a participating member of the task force. This does not mean that they don't support the work of the task force. They have other functions, and I believe these entities are better served as subject matter experts to help resolve specific issues that may be brought to the forefront by the task force leadership as an independent functioning entity. I believe Ms. Celeste Groden mentioned learning about hate crimes from an FBI subject matter expert. So this could be a continued function pending consultation with the FBI, of course. In the past 39 years, we have learned that there are other mechanisms to address issues and concerns and help resolve conflict, in addition to the work of the task force. Deputy Chief McCoy just spoke about the need to go back to the community. This is important as demographic change brings forth new ideas, new approaches, and new issues to meet the current needs. So moving forward, CRS is offering its services. We are committed to facilitate a series of dialogue where Anchorage residents are encouraged to attend and actively participate to identify issues and concerns, prioritize those concerns, and develop proposed solutions that could be implemented with a timeline. And Reverend Green spoke about community involvement. This is another way for community involvement because we need their input. So the participation includes community and faith leaders, representatives from established civil rights institutions, and service-providing organizations. They also include interested individuals and, of course, the student leaders. The process harnesses the energy that flows from the George Floyd protest sense of unity in expressing a global outrage against the system that they believe and perceive to be unfair, unjust, and biased towards people of color. Who we need at the table are the representatives of the 8 jurisdictional categories that include race, color, national origin, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, and disability. These people who care about their community and are willing to put in the time and the effort to begin the healing process. Essentially, people who speak the language of unity and acceptance and the language of empathy. And so hopefully we can begin that discussion soon based upon the current COVID-19 pandemic situation. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to questions. I got a couple of folks in the queue already. So first I have Mr. Perez-Revilla.
Thank you. Actually, my questions have all been answered. I just really appreciate all of the speakers. And I guess I do want to have one question. Is the task force currently in place? Is it meeting? Is it currently active?
Do you
What
want
was the question? Yes, we're active right now. We're meeting formally and informally.
Okay. And I guess that just before we end this meeting, I'd really love to know when the next meeting is and when the meetings are, and so that that I can be aware of them and potentially attend them. Thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate all the information and the presentation.
Yes, because of the coronavirus shutdown of Fairview Rec Center, we normally meet the second Friday of every month at noon there. It's possibly about an hour and a half every month.
Did you get that?
Thank you very much.
Oh, great.
I have a question. How do I get in the queue?
Sure, I'll go ahead and put you in the queue, Celeste.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Dunbar.
Actually, can we let Celeste go before me?
Sure. Go ahead, Celeste.
So I guess I have a couple of questions. I understand that there has been concern that people aren't really showing up for task force meetings, that they're pretty relaxed, and that there needs to be new energy or some type of a reform with the task force. And so since we're gathered here, I think, rather than talk about when we're meeting or when they're meeting, this is the time to share what those concerns are so that we can move forward and get them fixed. And so I just wanted to throw that out there because it makes no sense to have this conversation when we know that there are other issues surrounding the task force and the energy that it needs to have in order to actually move forward. And that was some of the concerns that I've been hearing. So.
Thank you. So, did you have anyone specific that you wanted to answer that, or just an open question, Celeste?
Well, we know that's an issue, and so I'd like to speak to it. I'd like to get it out on the table and let's flush it out so that we can get it straightened out and put forth a great, whether it's going to be a task force, a review board, or whatever, because we know that this community needs it.
Sure, thank you. So, I guess,
I can chime in.
So,
Felix, I can chime in?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Sure. Ms. Roden, this is Mike Thor of CRS. So one way to approach this is for me to share some of our consultation service. And like, for example, if there are concerns over our funding issues, we have task force that are very successful, that are in operation for 10, 15 years, that operate through a group of volunteers and receive no funding whatsoever from the municipality. So we have examples of those, and we can arrange for task force leadership to actually speak to those leaderships. And so that's one of the value-added service that we can provide. The current setup of the task force is that it's completely fully functional. And I encourage them to facilitate dialogue within the community to identify issues and concerns that the community has. And the other thing that we would like to do at the Community Relations Service is that because we work with everyone in the community, the solution has to be from the bottom up. And in order to do that, a dialogue has to be engaging and has to have members who's willing to participate and put in their time.
So I think Celeste. So basically, what Mr. Sora is saying is, yes, we do need to get to what you are saying, and DOJ CRS is volunteering to step in and assist with getting to what you, the questions that you are asking.
Okay.
Mr. Dunbar.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Celeste said, I mean, I think that this is the beginning of the conversation. We use an hour today, but it's clear we're going to have a more extended discussion this summer with, I think, the municipality and the Department of Justice and the folks on the task force. It's going to be a longer conversation than we were able to get to today. But I'm glad that we started it. I'm glad that myself, I learned a lot today, and I think hopefully my colleagues did as well. And one of the really interesting things is trying to conceptualize where the assembly, where the municipality fits in this, because perhaps we don't. Perhaps this isn't our role. Although, of course, the police force always will be directly involved, but perhaps we aren't the right convening body. Mr. Soar, I had heard that you were engaged with the process with the Department of, with the U.S. Attorney here. Are you able to speak about that on the record?
So that particular process is an internal process, one that was arranged between my agency and the Executive Office of the U.S. Attorney. So it does not affect the work that we do in Alaska, other than that we are in consultation with the U.S. Attorney's Office, District of Alaska.
Okay. So what's the next, I guess for anyone here, what's the next step? Or Mr. Soar, I'll ask you, what's the next step in your process that we should be aware of, and the Community Task Force should be aware of?
So currently, I can provide services. I received that green light to do so. Unfortunately, we're operating under a pandemic environment, and the last thing I want is to gather a large group of people in a room, even though we observe social distancing with or without mask, and I'm hoping that it's with the mask, that 10 or 11 days later, members who participated in that particular discussion will develop COVID-19. And so that would be an awful thing to happen. So there has to be other ways in order for us to have a conversation. So instead of having a room filled with 60 or 80 people, we would like to approach this piecemeal and replicate that same process over and over again with a smaller group of people, say 10 or 15. I believe the smaller the better, simply because people can express their views and input of how to proceed forward. So we can do that virtually, online. So where we can see each other, where we can interact with each other. I can also forward them other programs that are vital to this particular discussion, especially the processes and procedure relating to the dialogue on race. And the dialogue on race essentially will set up the end result of this is our concern, this is how we prioritize it, and this is how we would want to approach it. What are the necessary timelines that are needed to approach every single one of these concerns? So that's the next step.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So I have two more folks, and then we're going to end the work session. We started a little bit late, so we're fine. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. So I really have a question for Celeste. Celeste, I heard in your voice a very clear message, and I'm wondering if you have some specific ideas on how we might proceed to achieve what you're imagining.
Thank you for that. Yes, my heart is heavy and my voice, I'm sorry about that, but I guess I'm just a little frustrated and that we've been dancing around this for far too long. I understand, there's a funding issue if the Anchorage Equal Rights is not going to provide administrative services like they did back in the days when I served on the task force. Well, I know that the city just received a lot of money. And, my recommendation would be to use some of that money to fund this task force or, like I shared, it could be some type of a board. I don't know, but I know we need it. And I know we need a board or a task force that's effective because we've got people out here that are hurting. And so, yeah, my voice might sound a little concerning or...
Let me interrupt just briefly. What I heard you is that you were clear that you know that something needs to be done, and I'm just trying to zoom in on what it is. And I know it's hard maybe to come up with that. What I had originally been thinking, Celeste, was that the NAACP had been asking for input from the community, and I had heard the same from the Black Caucus, and I was hoping that there would be some kind of a community-based request to us that was specific. Is there anything like that out there that's kind of moving that you know of?
Well, I don't want to drop names, but the Alaska Black Caucus has been in discussion about hosting. We are looking at hosting a conversation surrounding the police. And, it would be great if we could tie it into the task force or whatever. But I do know, like I keep saying, that there's a need. And so, yes, we do have on the horizon to host something at the end of July.
Yep, because I believe when I hear from your groups that have been for years working on this, then I will be more comfortable taking action moving forward. Because what I'm experiencing is people in 360 degrees shouting, do this, and it's all conflicting. And so it's hard to find the critical path forward. And so I'm really hopeful that your groups that I have heard are doing this work can help share with us a path that we can really consider.
Okay, well, I've got the direction here. I'll give you something by the end of next week.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the speakers. I learned a lot, and I'm really glad that we have this work session. And I think my comments are really similar to Chris's, which are that I think many members of the Assembly are really eager to work to make positive change, but also in some way hesitant to jump in front of the community. And we want to know what people who are really impacted by all of this history have to say about what we should do moving forward. And so I just want to welcome any of the speakers and any members in our community to give us specific feedback and specific instruction on what you think is right so that we can do the right thing. And just thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this work session. Thank you to everyone for coming and looking forward to the next steps.